Thank you very much. Aileen, could I ask you to call for the Sederan and to make any apologies, please?
Good morning, members. Could you confirm your attendance when I call your name, please? Councillor Barton.
I'm here, thanks, Aileen.
Councillor McGee.
Yep.
Councillor Friel.
I'm here, thanks.
Councillor Cowan.
Yeah.
Councillor Sangster.
Here, thank you.
Councillor Mabin.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Lennox.
On here.
I've got apologies from Councillor Crawford. Councillor Watts.
Good morning, I'm here.
Councillor Filson.
Yep.
Councillor Hogg. Councillor Kyle.
Yeah.
Thanks, Aileen. So members are going to move on to the first item on the agenda, and that is any declarations of interest. No one in the room, no one online.
Yeah. Just a declaration of interest for the second item. Just for transparency, I'm on the Glasgow Pressway Airport Consultation Committee, but I don't think there's anything that I would need to no stand. Just transparency. Thank you.
I think I'll join you, Councillor McGee, because I think I'm your stand-in. If I'm not, although I've not attended a meeting, but just for transparency, I'll just do that as well. So members, Councillor Kyle had asked for a slot in the agenda before we go into any of the proper matters.
Thank you, Chair. Fellow, last time we were here, I made some remarks regarding the residents of Affin Road, New Cumnock, during the last planning meeting, for which I publicly apologise. As a New Cumnock man myself, I am sorry for any upset these remarks caused. My sincere apologies. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Kyle. Okay, we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, and that is the hearing procedure. Could you take us through that, Aileen?
So we've got one hearing this morning. The process will be, once the hearing begins, the planning officer will give details of the application. Objectors will then present their objections and will be given 5 minutes each. Members of the committee will then ask questions of the objectors. The applicant and/or their agent will then get the opportunity to speak for a maximum of 15 minutes, and members of the committee will then ask questions of the applicant on their submissions. At that point, the hearing will close and parties will withdraw to the public gallery, and the committee will consider the application. At that point, the Chief Planning Officer or representative will address the committee and give appropriate clarification on any issues raised during the hearing, and the committee will make their decision.
Thanks, Aileen. Members, item 3 on the agenda. Due to a process challenge received late yesterday in the afternoon, a decision has been made to stand this agenda item down at this time in order to consider all matters contained in the email correspondence received. So we're not going to be taking item 3 today. We're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda. And that is planning application number 22/0792/PP. The site for the Drum Wind Farm, located on and around the Drum, approximately 5.2 kilometres north east of Cumnock. Members, we do have a hearing for this application this morning, and I propose 5 minutes for each objector and 15 minutes for the agent. All happy with that? Thank you very much. So members, move on to the next part of the hearing procedure. And this is where the objectors and other agents will present their objections to the committee. Apologies, I've skipped this stage, so I'm going to have a bit.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to not go if you want me to, but morning, members. The purpose of this report is to present a major planning application for the consideration and determination of the Planning Committee. The application site is located in an area of commercial forestry off the A70 to the northeast of Cumnock. The development comprises an 8-turbine wind farm and associated infrastructure, including new and upgraded track, borrow pits and water crossings. The development has a generating capacity of 49.6 megawatts. Details of the site and development are set out at paragraphs 3 to 6. Consultation responses are set out at paragraphs 8 to 27, noting that 2 aviation consultees maintain an objection, and there are objections from Nature Scot and the RSPB. All other consultees have raised no objection, subject to use of appropriate conditions to control various matters. Objections from 4 third parties have been received and 4 representations in support of the development have been received, including from some community councils, all as set out in paragraph 28. I'll just move on to a slideshow and some of the details of the development before concluding. So if you bear with me, I'll share my screen. So this slide and the next is just showing the site. You'll notice that the site is forested. It's a commercial forestry and access taken from the A70 between Cumnock and Muirkirk. This is the proposed site layout. It shows existing access track in grey and proposed in brown. The 8 turbines and the associated hard standings are shown located throughout the site, with the site compound and borrow pitch sets area just in the northern part of the site in the orange colour. This slide is a constraints map. The key matter of note is the location of the Muirkirk and North Lowther Uplands Special Protection Area and Muirkirk Uplands Site of Special Scientific Interest. That's all located to the immediate northern, eastern and partial southern boundary of the site. So essentially it's wrapping round the site. I appreciate there's a few colours going on there, but basically it's the kind of northeastern, eastern and southeastern section there that's of particular relevance, just for context. This is the blade tip zone of theoretical visibility plan. The purple represents where 6 to 8 turbines are theoretically visible, noting that theoretical visibility is quite extensive out to the 5 kilometres. Each of those concentric circles is 5 kilometre distance. So the first 5 kilometres quite extensive, and then it becomes more fragmented as it increases with distance. More visibility is towards the west of the development. Just for members to note, this is a bare ground plan, so this doesn't take account of any screening from buildings or vegetation. So this is it's theoretical visibility if there was nothing in the way of the turbines. This one is the same type of plan, but this is for the hub of the turbine. So the kind of the highest part of the main section before the blades extend up. Still showing extensive visibility out to around 5 kilometres, and then it becomes probably slightly more fragmented beyond that. You see some of the other colours appearing, showing lesser turbine numbers are visible in different locations. Just moving on to some of the viewpoints. Members had the benefits of site visit yesterday, so the viewpoints I'm going to show correspond to the ones that members visited yesterday. So this first one is located at Cronbury. It's around 3 kilometres from the nearest turbine. That's the photo of the site, looking towards the site with the wire line below. Members will just note the intervening landscape there. It stops the lower parts of the turbines from being seen. And then the photo montage showing the visual effects from this location. This viewpoint is from viewpoint 3. It's within the Glenmuir Valley, around 1.8 kilometres southwest of the nearest turbine. This is the closest viewpoint to the development, and it's taken within the upland river valley landscape, looking towards the site. And the photo montage. So that's the purpose of this viewpoint. As a publicly accessible location, there are a number of residential properties along the Glenmuir Valley, so it's representative of that, but it's also representative of the landscape type. It's a transition here between the smaller scale upland river valley heading towards the plateau moorland, which extends well beyond the turbines. The turbines are on the edge of the plateau moorland landscape type, and you'll see the forestry block for the drum area just shown on that slide. These slides are from viewpoint 5 at Auchinleck. It's around 7 kilometres west of the development. It shows the visibility of nearly the full height of the turbines with the settled landscape, the upland landscape behind, and some other existing and approved wind farms visible and separate and more distant developments. So you can see that there's a cluster over towards the Muircut direction on the left of the wire line, and there's the consented Lethans development more towards the right-hand side there with the drum located centrally. And that is the photo montage from that location. These slides are from viewpoint 8 on the higher ground at the south of New Cumnock. That's nearly 9 kilometres distant. This view is showing the development to the north of New Cumnock and separate from any other wind farm, largely located behind the landscape and showing a collection of hubs and blades above the intervening landscape. Members will note that this is a sector of the New Cumnock landscape that is largely clear of wind farms at the moment. Now turning to viewpoint 6 at Muircut, it's around 6 kilometres northeast. Turbines are seen breaking the landscape horizon with a mixture of blades and hubs visible, with no cumulative effects visible other than the wind farms towards the northeast of this viewpoint, which is within neighbouring South Lanarkshire and which would be behind you at this viewpoint. And the final slide of the presentation is the cumulative location plan of East Ayrshire wind farms. The site's obviously highlighted there with the red round it. It's kind of located largely on its own, not next to any other wind farms immediately, but we show all the other operational consented and application stage developments. And just noting that the site is reasonably remote from those other wind farms, albeit it does still play a part in some cumulative effects, as some of the viewpoints will have shown. Just come back to the presentation. Just to turn to the assessment matters now, the key matters of interest are set out from paragraphs 35 to 114, noting that strong and principal support for such developments is gained from the development plan and from other national and local policies in respect of renewable energy generation and positive effects on carbon emissions over the lifetime of the development. The output is reasonably modest at 49.6 megawatts, however it remains nonetheless a valuable contribution to Scottish Government targets for renewable energy generation. There are significant landscape and visual effects from the development, predominantly in the local area up to around 6 kilometres from the development. The site location is at the edges of the larger scale plateau moorland landscape and will therefore also have some significant effects to parts of the smaller scale upland river valleys of the Gass and Glenmuir waters. Visual impacts will be most significant in closer proximity, with parts of the Glenmuir Valley and properties within that area subject to significant visual effects, and significant visual effects extending out to parts of settlements, although undulating landform and vegetation provides screening from many locations. Visible aviation warning lighting would extend effects into the night time, and limited to no mitigation is proposed to lessen this, although mitigation to reduce effects could be secured by planning condition. The potential impacts on the adjacent SPA and SSSI have not been satisfactorily resolved, with a lack of information or unsatisfactory information currently requiring an HRSCOT and RSPB objection, along with concerns about conclusions reached by the applicant and the sufficiency of mitigation measures. The development fails an appropriate assessment of potential effects on the SPA and is considered to be contrary to a number of development plan policies on this basis. Two aviation consultees retain objections to the development, and the development is therefore not satisfactorily addressed these technical concerns. There are no unacceptable impacts in a range of different matters, including soils, noise and water environment, forestry and the historic environment, often subject to appropriate planning conditions to secure mitigation, for example, around compensatory forestry planting, protection of private water supply, noise limits and archaeology. There are no unacceptable impacts on communities or individual dwellings by way of visual impact, with no property adjudged to receive any overbearing visual impacts. Noise impacts can be kept within acceptable levels subject to controlling conditions, and shadow flicker can be avoided via planning conditions. There will be some limited net economic benefits nationally and locally from the construction and operation of the wind farm, although the supporting information suggests that this will not be significant in nature. In terms of local skills and employment, how this will be maximised has not been well demonstrated in the application, but securing the detail of how this will be maximised to comply with planning policy could be achieved through planning condition. Traffic and transport presents no unacceptable impact subject to planning conditions, with the proposed use of borrow pits expected to significantly reduce potential traffic movements. So just turning to conclusions, as noted at paragraphs 115 to 118, development is considered to be contrary to a number of development plan policies in respect of aviation and also ecological and biodiversity type matters, primarily associated with the adjacent SPA and SSSI. Landscape and visual effects are significant, particularly locally. However, it's considered that such effects are not out of proportion from what could be expected of a wind farm of this size and scale, albeit this is considered to be a finely balanced judgment. Although the development complies with other policies and parts of policies of the development plan, or can be made to do so through condition, overall the development is considered to be contrary to the development plan, and material considerations do not indicate that the application should be approved contrary to the development plan. Legal and financial risk implications are set out paragraphs 119 to 126, noting that if committee was minded to approve, the application needs referred to Scottish ministers due to the outstanding Nature Scot objection. Further, the applicant would be expected to enter into a legal agreement with the council to secure a planning monitoring officer and a financial guarantee should the application be approved. Finally, if the application is refused, it may lead to an appeal by the applicant. The recommendation is set out paragraph 2, which is to refuse the application for the reasons set out on page 60 of your papers. I thank you.
Very much, David, and apologies for skipping by you there. So, members, we are actually on to part 2 of the hearing now. That's where we're here for the objectors and other agents who will present their objections to the committee in support of their written objections. So I've got 2 objectors want to speak. So could I ask Mrs. Linda Howard maybe come up to the lectern? Miss Howard, so if you take your time. What I tend to do is you've got 5 minutes. As you get close to the 5 minutes, or maybe just give you a gentle reminder just to sum up near that at that time.
From the applicant's documentation. We believe that this site offers an exciting opportunity to develop a wind farm project within an area where it is unlikely to cause significant impacts. Knowing the valley, this is concerning and merits debate. The glacial pastoral historical glen was previously one of East Ayrshire's unspoilt high visual amenity areas. Recent industrialisation has left in situ alien Bing landscapes to the north and south. Proposed turbines to the northeast of 220 metres high, 726 feet, no doubt will result in adverse dominating impacts, be visually prominent and intrusive throughout the vista along the self-contained valley basin. To gauge perspective, on Avigard Hill to the southwest, a communications mast stands, which is visible from various locations, neighbouring and afar. Turbines will dwarf even this. Unfortunately, documentation photomontages were limited to 2, as respect of the valley itself. The central site of said turbines not being represented in the valley setting. Quote, viewpoint analysis was recorded as sensitivity high, magnitude high, major overall impact. No viewpoints provided from either of the 2 U-roads which give route access to the valley. The development site of 196 hectares, 484 acres, threatens the special topography of landscape, wildlife and recreational enjoyment as it exists. A peaceful escape valued both by residents and visitors from local communities and beyond. A physical, psychological, rewarding place at no cost. The natural environmental assets are under threat, inclusive of biodiversity, ornithology, ecology, peatland and hydrology, to name but a few. It was concerning to learn of the potential impacts as specific to hydrology and hydrogeology, that is due to the infrastructure preparations. Quote, this study area, River Aire catchment, drained by the Bella Water, Gas Water, and the Lugar Glenmuir water courses, could potentially be impacted by increased surface water runoff, sedimentation, foul drainage, and chemical pollution. It is certainly concerning in relation to the Muirkirk Upland Special Protection Area and the nearby site of special scientific interest, that sensitive habitats could likely be impacted. Additional industrialisation in this contained landscape will destroy a unique setting. Mitigation measures are not known outcomes for evaluation until the passage of time, unlikely to compensate for the millennia of inherited natural development and land management. Documentation states, quote, "The site lies within a cluster of wind farms. This is so. Cumulative impact appearing on passage along the valley currently to the northwest, the southwest and east. A consented wind farm to the east will then burden the headland itself when operational." The applicant states, quote, "Scotland represents the primary target for new development. The Glenmuir Valley is not a target, nor should it be demeaned as an exciting opportunity focused on its hills. This unique place surely merits preservation, protection and recognition of its worth in East Ayrshire's environmental legacy of inheritance." I was going to ask if a site visit had been proposed or undertaken. I was pleased to hear that a site visit has been undertaken in order to focus and bring together the actual impact and the parameters of the valley, which will be, I must strongly say, will be highly impacted by this development, sitting within the lowland hill areas. Thank you for that. And thanks, Chair. Thanks, members.
Thanks very much, Mrs Howie. At this point, we open it up to members. If you've got any questions for yourself. No, I don't see any questions. So thank you very much, Mrs Howie. If
Thank you.
just return to the public gallery. The next objector who want to speak is Mr. John Ferguson. Thanks, Mr. Ferguson. Again, it's 5 minutes and maybe a gentle reminder if you're near the time.
Good morning, folks. I've no notes. It's just a couple of points I'd like to state. I'm a great believer that our country is fantastic, but we see they want to destroy this county. I do a lot of time down in the borders, and I'll give you, for instance, when moving down to the borders to Melrose, I come all the way back up this road. You get to the A70, you get to the Highford Bridge, you don't see one windmill or nothing in the borders. And you get to the Highford Bridge and you look down to Ayrshire and all we see is windmills. This is my point. Have we took enough of these windmills? And then when you get them sitting there, switched off, there's a reason. Why are they putting more up? I don't see any reason for it at all. We're putting these battery farms round about the place too, to store it. We put the pylons up and all the rest of it. The cables are not going under the ground. Where another thing is the countries that own these windmills. We haven't got any Scottish companies owning these windmills. All the profits is going over outside Scotland. The electricity is not getting any cheaper, so I don't see the point of them. That's enough I'll be able to say.
Thanks very much, Mr. Ferguson. So members, have you got any questions for Mr. Ferguson? No. Thanks very much, Mr. Ferguson. If you just return to the public gallery, please. So members, we're now at the part of the procedure where we hear for the applicant and or their agent, who will speak for a maximum of a total of 15 minutes in support of their application. I'm going to ask Mr. Donaghy.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee today. My name is Graham Donachie. I'm Head of Development for Wind Estate. We're the applicant for the proposed development, and we're a developer of onshore wind farms working on a diverse mix of small to large scale projects across Scotland. You've heard the proposed application. The Drum Wind Farm is located in an area of commercial forestry, in an area that also has had a lot of open cast coal mining in the past. It's approximately 5 kilometres northeast of Cumnock, 8 wind turbines, 220 metres to tip. We've heard from the planning department about the context of the site and the reasoning for the recommendation to refuse. And for us, that boils down to 2 key issues: an outstanding objection from Nature Scot and RSPB in relation to the proximity to the SPA and the SSSI, and outstanding objections from Glasgow Prestwick Airport and NATS in relation to aviation interests. There are no further reasons for refusal given, and the application has not raised reasons that warrant refusal on any other grounds, including landscape and visual, residential impact, heritage impact, and so on. So I'd just like to focus on those 2 reasons for refusal, because we believe these issues are not insurmountable, but do require further time for us to address these thoroughly. Taking the Nature Scot RSPB issue first, as we've heard, the site is bordered by the Muirkirk Uplands SSSI and the Muirkirk and North Lowther Uplands SPA. And it's true that Nature Scot continues to object due to queries with the assessment supplied to date. But I'd like to make clear their objection is based on the requirement for further clarifications in the data supplied, and not an objection based on the impacts of the proposed development. And that for us is an important distinction, because in our opinion, we believe that we will be able to resolve these outstanding queries Nature Scot have and remove their objection. We're working with Nature Scot to handle these queries and requests for further information, and we're actually going to be supplying them with a further round of clarifications, hopefully later today. The main part of their objection, as detailed in the planning officer's report, is how the proposed development's objectives and mitigation measures tie in with the existing Powharnell Mitigation and Management Plan. That was a plan that was set up and is being implemented to ensure that the former open cast coal mines in the area are restored to best promote environmental regeneration. And we don't believe that our proposal conflicts with the aims of the Powharnell Management Plan, but rather they can in fact complement each other. And I also understand that Nature Scot believe the same, but they're currently treading on the side of caution with regards to the Muirkirk SPA due to a steady decline of protected species within the SPA. In fact, we're working with Nature Scot to demonstrate that the site will in fact have a net positive impact on the SPA through various schemes that will be included as part of our development. And these include biodiversity enhancement plans, peatland restoration and management plans, wader habitat enhancements, a habitat improvement and management plan, biodiversity enhancement plans, ornithological protection plans to safeguard protected species such as peregrine, hen harrier, and black grouse. And the key point on all of these are not mitigation plans, but these are enhancement plans, which are a key part of MPF4, as we have to demonstrate a net environmental benefit to the proposed application. And they're all designed to have a long-lasting environmental benefit to the site. And Nature Scot are supportive of these management plans, but we do require further time to work with Nature Scot to come to an agreement on these. I completely understand that the planning officers don't want applications to sit around and clog up the planning system forever. However, it's no secret that resources within statutory consultees are very stretched at the moment in time. This application was originally submitted in December 2022, and we first received the consultation response from Nature Scot in April 2023, and we responded a few weeks later at the beginning of June 2023. It was then a further 13 months before we heard from Nature Scot again with feedback on the information. and we'd also been appointed a new case officer. Since then, we've been in contact with that case officer at NatureScot, but it's often a period of months before they're able to clarify the receipt and review the new information that we had submitted. This is not to point a finger or blame NatureScot, but it is clear that they are under a real strain for their resources. But it's just highlighting why the issue is taking so long to resolve. And the resource issues don't stop with NatureScot. So when we're collating data that they require, it requires us to go to third parties such as RSPB or local raptor groups. And that can also take longer than we'd like to process and collate the data required. In addition, in the intervening period between submitting the application and now, NatureScot have updated their assessment criteria and methodology, which has meant that we've effectively had to rewrite our ecological and ornithological assessments. NatureScot have been applying a high degree of rigour, as they should, due to the proximity to the SPA and the SSSI, and that's stated in the report. But currently, the impacts of the site are undetermined, as NatureScot are seeking to ensure that the survey and assessment data that they have is extensive enough to ensure the integrity of the SPA and the SSSI is protected. In my opinion, if we were given a bit more time, then we'd at least be able to establish NatureScot's actual evaluation of the impacts of the site. But at this stage, the project is being moved forward for determination prematurely without knowing what the final position is. Just quickly on aviation matters. As mentioned, we have outstanding objections from NATS and also Glasgow Prestwick Airport. Technical solutions and mitigation are available to address both of these objections. We'll be adopting the Terma radar mitigation solution for Glasgow Prestwick Airport and an Indra radar mitigation solution for NATS. And as you'll be aware, these are common issues in East Ayrshire, and these are common mitigation solutions for wind farm developments. The primary reason these have not yet been resolved is that aviation consultees require us to make a substantial 5-figure payment prior to the removal of their objections, and it does not make sense to proceed with these payments until we get to the bottom of the NatureScot position. That process would be undertaken once we understand what the actual NatureScot evaluation of the site is. As the committee report states, conditions can be used to overcome these matters and prevent development from commencing until technical matters are resolved. So I don't consider that aviation and radar matters are legitimate reasons for refusal, as there are a process to follow to remove these, and it can be protected via planning condition. So in regards to next steps, regardless of today's outcome, we are going to continue to work with NatureScot to find the position in which they can give us a true assessment of the impacts on site. My ask this morning is simply to grant us more time to get to the bottom of these issues with NatureScot, and we're absolutely happy to do this via further planning processing agreement, as we've done previously. We are equally frustrated by the length of time this application is taking to resolve, but I want to ensure the committee that we are working as quickly as we can with NatureScot to resolve their objection. And if it transpires that they do indeed object to their proposal, then I completely understand the rationale for refusing the application. However, if they are minded to remove their objection, then we're able to make those necessary payments to the aviation stakeholders to resolve those outstanding objections, and that would leave the application with a clean bill of health. I appreciate we've heard from some objectors this morning, but you'll also note that we do have support for the project within local communities, and we've had written letters of support from Crombury, Logan and Lugar Community Council, Ochiltree and Scares Community Council, Dalmellington and Drogheda Community Council, Rankenston and Stair Community Council, and the 9cc group also support. Should the application be refused today, then as stated, we will still seek to get to the bottom of NatureScot's position. And if that turns out being positive, then the timings of this would inform our strategy for progressing, and that would either be via appeal or resubmission of the application. So finally, to reiterate, We believe these issues are indeed resolvable in time, and we're seeking the opportunity to resolve these points and hopefully avoid all parties having resources tied up in an appeal process or with further planning application submissions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to open up to members for any questions. There's no question. No, sorry. Councillor Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that, Mr. Donaghy, was it? Yeah.
Yep.
Appreciate it may not be a material planning consideration, but I was just wondering if you had any idea at this point in time, should the application be approved and go ahead, what the delivery route would be for the large components that need to be delivered on site. Could you just confirm what that delivery route would look like, please?
Yeah, I don't know if we have a map to hand that shows the wider area. The delivery route would come from Glasgow, the King George the 5th or 6th dock, and come down the M77 and then down the A77. Sorry, I don't have a map, so I could point to you on a map. There is a delivery route. It would be shared with a consented wind farm. It's an energy contour site that's closer, it's further up the A70, and it's closer to Muirkirk Harecraig wind farm, I believe it's called, if you've heard that. So the delivery route, that's consented already. And they're putting in land agreements to secure their route. And we would look to share infrastructure with them up to our point on the A70. When we are heading north, we would turn right into our site and they would continue on to their site.
With your permission, Chair. So just to clarify that, I'm just trying to, it's not quite, you haven't been quite specific enough for me. Are you planning to go down to Belfield roundabout at Kilmarnock and down the A76, then onto the A70, i.e. through Mauchline?
We would be, I can't confirm for certain because I don't have a map in front of me. So apologies, Councillor Lennox. But it comes through Lugar, and there's Chair, would it be okay if I had 2 minutes to try and locate a map to clarify?
Yeah, Chair. I don't think we need to take it any further. If it's going through Lugar, then it's obviously come down the A76.
Noted, Councillor Lennox. Members, any other questions? No. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I should return to the public gallery. So members, at this point, that's the hearing procedure closed, and I hand back over to our planning colleagues to clarify any issues raised during the hearing procedure.
Thanks, Chair. Not anything specific to come back to from Mrs Howie's or Mr Ferguson's comments. So in terms of Mr Donaghy's comments, it has been a lot of backwards and forwards over time with Nature Scot. But the key point to note here is they actually don't have enough information to come to a firm conclusion. We've had the application since basically the start of 2023. So in our view, you could actually describe it as the application's premature. A lot of this could have been pulled together or at least been an awful lot closer before the application was submitted. We've been quite generous in terms of the time that's been given to this application. We have had a processing agreement in place to allow these things to be explored. There's been a couple of rounds of submissions, at least to Nature Scot. So there's been ongoing discussions, and the most recent response was only last month, still querying various bits of information, the quality of the information, and the amount of the information. So the kind of key point here is it's an objection based on lack of information to then be able to demonstrate whether there's a significant effect on the SPA. So we've not even got to the point of being able to judge whether there's a definite significant effect or not. We're waiting on the information to still get to that point. But we've had an application in for 2.5, nearly 3 years now. So in our view as the planning department, this can still be done out with the scope of the application. And potentially, the only correct potentially now is just that we're still in the same position. We didn't bring it up a year ago because this could still have been taking place out with the application stage. So it's just to kind of reiterate of it's a lack of information. And despite the delays with Nature Scott, that's been nearly 3 years to try and pull this together and we're not there. So in our view, we've got to bring this to a conclusion at some point. It doesn't preclude the applicant from continuing to go and work on that with Nature Scott, but they do it out with the application stage instead of us holding on to another application for another year or however long it might be until that gets pulled together. With no guarantee that Nature Scott will actually reach a point of no objection. They may find that it's still unacceptable. So in our view, it's right to bring this to a conclusion now and let the applicant go and work on that separately. In terms of the aviation objections, yeah, normally they can be resolved through a technical solution. But again, I appreciate there's obviously a cost to that to the applicant, but we still remain with 2 objections. We ask every other wind farm to resolve these before we determine them. We have touched on why we don't want to use planning conditions for them, because if we do that and then the development is consented, it may be that those objections don't get resolved anytime soon. Maybe it still hangs on longer and there's other developments that could be either in the pipeline or coming along that may have a clean bill of health that are actually able to progress much faster. So there's cumulative potential problems when you use planning conditions, and it's been something that we have not used here in East Ayrshire to get round about these unless we've had clarification from the aviation consultees themselves that they are satisfied with the conditions that they are putting forward. But at the moment we remain with objections, even if it is solely down to just when the applicant pays the money. At the moment, for us, on paper, there's a technical concern there from the consultees that's not been resolved. Potentially that could be, the sounds of it, if it is just a money issue, then that's for the applicant to make a call on. But our recommendation is we don't use planning conditions to secure that in the interim, and that would tie in with what we've done with other wind farms in the past year as well. So just as a kind of final point, obviously the applicant's asking for an extension to it. We think we've been quite generous with extensions up to now. It's a major application. The usual target is 4 months. We've given around about 3 years on this one, and we've still not reached the point of having all the information that seems to be needed by our consultees to get comfortable on it. So my recommendation to you is that we don't continue it. We already have been generous in that regard. And ultimately this allows the applicant to go away and work on this, and they can come back, as alluded to Mr Donachie, whether that's a resubmission or whether he chooses to appeal it if they resolve it really quickly. But at the moment, I'm suggesting to you that we don't hold on to this any longer than we already have. But I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks for clarifying that, David. So members, it's over to yourself for any discussion, motions, and then ultimately a decision. This application. Councillor Mabin.
It's just procedural that I'm trying to get my head around. Do these applications time out? Is there a time limit on them? Can we simply say postponed pending more information?
We can. There's nothing to stop us, although the general Scottish Government advises that we should be handling applications and taking them through the system quickly. You obviously get a report twice yearly now on legacy cases, of cases that are over a year. We do our best to keep those to a minimum. This is one of the oldest cases we have on our books now, if not the oldest. It's certainly in the kind of top 2 or 3. So we've been generous in our time. There's nothing to prevent us holding on to it. We have processing agreements. We can extend it again if we thought there was a reasonable prospect of something being resolved. That's within our gift. But we also have to just balance that against how many extensions do we want to give. So the answer to your question is yes, we can extend it. It's entirely within our gift as a planning authority.
Okay with that, Councillor Mabin?
I'm just thinking of the amount of work that would be generated from resubmitting later or from putting in an appeal if a postponement pending more information is the simplest, easiest way to deal with this problem.
We've been there a few times in the application. That's the problem. I'm not totally confident that would be resolved. I've seen 2 recent emails from NatureScot, and they're not short in terms of what they're asking for, and still not satisfied with the most recent information that was supposedly submitted to try and resolve this. So I get we've had these discussions as well of like, do we wait? Do we see if we can get it resolved? You can wait. Maybe it gets resolved. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But we've been here 2 or 3 times now, and it's the most recent responses to the information that came in the middle of the summer. Just come back in August there, and they're still asking for more information, or they're not happy with the information that's been submitted. So it just doesn't fill me with confidence that we're nearly there. I could be wrong. It might be able to submit it next time, but I've not got the confidence that that's where we're at.
Thanks, David. I'm going to bring in Councillor Kyle, then Maitland, and then Councillor Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. After hearing all the different information and the information we've got in front of us, I propose that the planning application is refused. Saves a lot of time. As David said, it's been running too long. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I think members are still in the discussion stage at this moment, but it is noted that you've proposed that. So, Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Chair. David, I think you've given us a very thorough explanation of why we can't put in planning conditions on this particular application. It was just to clarify that planning conditions are not the answer to this actual application, and we still don't have the confidence that the results that come back from the 2 consultees will be able to put the information in front of us to resolve this issue. So I'm just looking for clarification on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. The aviation objections, in theory, we could put planning conditions on them, but we don't think it's a good idea to do that for the reasons set out in the report. But they could, if members were minded, if you wanted to do that, there's nothing to stop you if they were worded in the right way. In terms of the impacts in the SPA and so forth, no, conditions won't resolve that. There's quite a significant position on that. We've set that out in the report there, just in terms of a NatureScot objection. An SPA has very high protection. It's an international designation. You have to show that there's no negative effects on it, and they've not been able to do that. And you need the information first to be able to reach that conclusion. So at the moment, we don't have the information to even reach the conclusion about the potential impacts on the SPA. And ultimately, that's reflected in the position in NatureScot objecting, which is not something to do lightly. And also, if members were minded towards approval, we would still have referral to Scottish ministers to make, reflecting the seriousness of the objection from NatureScot. So the kind of bottom line in that is no, we could not get round about the SPA issues with conditions, albeit it wouldn't stop you from moving approval if you were so minded, if you didn't think that was an issue. But ultimately, I would still have to go to Scottish ministers. But our clear recommendation is that this doesn't comply with the development plan on the basis that we've set out.
Through you, Chair, just to also clarify around about some of the legal bits with the conditions. Normally the position would be, as David has said, where something might be difficult to achieve, but it's not impossible, then absolutely you can look at imposing planning conditions in relation to certain issues, and particularly some of the issues that have been highlighted in this report. But obviously there are other issues that David has clearly alluded to that you would also want to take on board in relation to this particular matter, because I think one of the difficulties is that as members are clearly hearing what's coming through here is there's no guarantee how long it may take to deal with the situation with Nature Scott. They may come back quickly and resolve matters, but as you've seen from what's happened to date, we're 3 years in, we're nearly 4 years in with this application, and some of the issues are still, you know, there's still a bit of, there's still further information on what appear to be fundamental issues still outstanding, still required to be satisfied. So the difficulty is we are in that unknown territory around about, you know, effectively how long is a piece of string at the moment, in terms of how long that may take to be satisfied. And clearly there are other matters, as David has alluded to, that you would want to consider. But certainly from a legal point, you know, conditions can be considered, but obviously David's clearly alluded to the other considerations you would want to take on board regarding this.
Thanks, Craig. Happy with that response, yep. So, Councillor Lennox.
Thanks again, Chair. Thanks, David, for your presentation. I think you made it pretty clear that there's really good grounds for refusal in terms of the what's been noted in page 60, and I would totally agree with you in that respect. And I'd be happy to support your recommendation in that respect. I appreciate there's a lot of support within the communities, and that there are letters of support in for some of the community groups in terms of supporting the application. There's probably valid reasons for that as well, which I won't get into, but I think the objectors have got, there's some merit in terms of the landscape and visual amenity that some of the objectors have got as well. And I'd be inclined to, if we were planning to refuse the application, I'd be minded to include something along those lines in terms of the landscape and visual amenity as well, because I think, as we saw in the site visit, these are quite prominent. These will be quite prominent in the landscape within certain areas, especially within the valley itself. So, just my thoughts on it. I'd be minded if it moves for refusal, I'd be minded to include something along those lines in the refusal as well, just to get it on record. Thanks, Chair.
It's a fair point, Councillor Lennox. You see in our report, it's a balanced judgment on landscape and visual. We've come to our conclusions. You'd be perfectly entitled to find differently. There are significant effects. Glenmuir Valley is clearly one of them. You visited that yesterday. The only thing just to caution, and I think, as I said, it's legitimate. You can come to this view perfectly well. The only other thing to caution is that inevitably from large-scale structures there will be some significant effects. So it's just about explaining, obviously, where the unacceptable effects would be, because we would expect that some significant adverse landscape and visual effects would occur from large structures like this, and that's within the policy framework. But even with that, it's a judgment call for yourself and other members about whether you find that an acceptable balance or not. You see our recommendation here, but you'll also hear me say that that's a finely balanced judgment. You're entitled to come to a different position on that, and I think you reasonably could.
Want to come back in, Councillor Lennox?
Just thanks, Chair. Just to clarify my own position as well. I'm absolutely in support of trying to generate the country's energy using renewable energies and green energy, etc., etc. So I'm absolutely not against the construction of wind farms in any shape or form. I do think, however, this particular application, it looks maybe not the right way to, maybe not the right terminology, but it looks as if it's been dropped out of a helicopter into the middle of the landscape in this particular instance, and it's not sitting well with me, to be honest. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lennox. I've got Councillor Watts, then I've got Councillor McGee.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, following our site visit yesterday, we looked at this from various different areas. We looked from Newcombe, Muirkirk, Cronbury, and I would come down on the side, totally supportive on the reasons for refusal on page 60. I think they hit the nail on the head completely. But I do also think that the visual impacts from Auchinleck, Cumnock, New Cumnock and Muirkirk and Cronbury, as well as the potential devastating effect on the Glenmuir Valley from the site we saw yesterday, it'd be extremely overbearing on that area. So I totally see where Councillor Lennox is coming from with regard to the visual amenity, and I would agree that that really should be put into the reasons for refusal as well. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McGee.
Right, thanks, Chair. No, just to concur with Councillor Lennox and Councillor Watts, I'd be happy to support Councillor Lennox in that. Don't have the ability to the proper wording for it, but I would happy to support Councillor Lennox. Having been in the site visit, I think, as David says, Ken, it's a judgment call, but I would have said that that view is correct, but presented by Councillor Lennox. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Councillor Maitland.
Might be jumping the gun here. Is that a motion and an amendment we've had put forward? Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to see what other questions, discussions still ongoing, then I'll try and kind of summarise where we are.
Through you, Chair, also, I know members are edging towards a decision in this one now, but it was just to be clarify with some of the comments from councillors there. Can I just check? Is it just purely the visual impacts of the wind farm as a standalone that are causing concerns, or other concerns also cumulatively? It just, for the purposes of the minute, just so that we're clear as we move towards, a decision. And I know David, I think, is just going to come in.
Members, I suppose we would have to frame a reason for refusal round about this as well. So it is just important that we're clear on what the impacts are that are unacceptable to you. So I know that there's been some mention of some of the locations that we visited, the visual impact. There's been mention of the landscape impact as well. We also need to tie that into policy grounds as well. So it's just something to bear in mind, that for the purpose of the minute, but also crucially for if this is an extra reason for refusal of the wind farm, that we just tie down exactly what members' concerns are, and that we tie that to policy. Now, there's policies mentioned in that section of the report that we can tie into. That it's then just about being very clear on what are the reasons, like what are the unacceptable impacts to members if that's the way that it's going, just so we can make that accurately reflected as in the reasons for refusal.
Members, any further questions or points need clarified? Councillor Maitland.
Are we about to get clarification on what I've forgotten the language at the moment for what policies that
Yeah, I can do that.
I would like clarification before any.
No problem.
further
Just
amendment.
at the top of page 48, which is the end of paragraph 61, you see that officers are saying that we're finding it to be compliant with policies NE1 and RE1 of LDP2, policy 11 of NPF4. It suggests that that's the policies that you would want to focus on, because those are the ones that would be most relevant to landscape and visual and cumulative type impacts if members were so inclined. And obviously it's just tag it to them, but the kind of explanation around it just needs to be clear about what the unacceptable impacts are and why you think it wouldn't meet those policies, but I'd suggest that those are your most relevant ones.
Apologies, the hearing procedure's closed at this time, so we can't take any discussion. Okay, apologies for that. Yep. Nope. Okay, is there any further questions or clarifications you need? Then we'll try and kind of. Oh, Councillor McGee.
I don't know if it's of any help, David, but in my view, again, it wasn't so much a cumulative impact, but as a standalone impact, I felt that I don't know if it was the best way of describing it, but Councillor Lennox, as he said, his cell, but it looked as if the pylons had been getting in the photo montage, had just been dropped there out a helicopter, they were suddenly there, and it was that impact on especially near such an important site of specific interest. So I wouldn't say it was cumulative. This is only my view for the site visit, but I think it was as a standalone, and that was my view. I don't know if that's of any help at all.
Councillor Lennox.
I would totally agree with Councillor McGee in that sense, and that was kind of what I was saying. In terms of it being dropped to a helicopter, it is kind of isolated in that area, and it's intrusive, if you like. I don't think that the cumulative impact isn't part of the equation, and I agree with Councillor McGee's assessment there, particularly its proximity to the site of special interest.
Just to clarify, the SSI designation is not a landscape or visual type designation. So just for clarity, that you're looking at landscapes rather than the SSI. The SSI is the bit that we've got in terms of the impact on ecology and so forth. So it's just so that we're clear around about what we'd be using. So there's landscape type impacts, which I think perhaps one of the things you're referring to there, whether it's the host landscape, the adjacent landscapes, or just wider, however way you want to explain that. And then there's obviously visual impacts as well. So that's the two elements that you've been clear on your cumulative position. So it's landscape and visual, and it's just about kind of being clear what those issues are. And if members were so minded, if we had a kind of an outline of what the concerns were, I think officers could probably frame the exact wording, I would think, and I'm looking to legal colleagues here in terms of Craig, that would be something that would be acceptable, or whether it has to be exactly stipulated. But if we have the kind of gist of what the concerns are, we could frame that round about the policies of concern to you. It's an option for you, but happy to take any advice if that's out of turn.
I think, David, that would be acceptable as long as members are saying, you know, what are their concerns. And I've wrote down, I know that you've said it looks like it's being parachuted in, said it doesn't relate to its landscape setting, it doesn't take it into account on that, it doesn't blend in. So we could add the planning language to that, and you'd be clear about then linking it to the policy requirements.
The visual impact on the different places.
Yep.
Through you, Chair, I suppose what members are saying, if we look at page 47 with the summary of the landscape and visual impacts, what I'm taking it as from what members are saying is, as a standalone wind farm, your concern is that there will be significant landscape and visual effects at this location. And that you feel, therefore, as I'm taking it, is that you perhaps feel that it doesn't comply with the relevant policies on page 48. I know members of, I know particularly, for example, Councillor Watts, you've identified, particularly when you look at it from specific locations, Auchinleck, Crombury, New Cumnock, etc. But I'm taking it that in essence, members, that's essentially what you're saying. You're concerned about those, you know, significant impacts from the large scale, and visual effects from the large scale turbines at that particular location when viewed you know, from other locations, you know, within the area, with particular reference to that, as I think, as you've said, Councillor Lennox, given the size of the turbines, you're concerned about the fact that they will be seen for you know, a geographical distance which is you consider to be unacceptable, given the significant effects.
Great. So, Councillor Watts, I know you want to come in, and then Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, I mean, I think, yes, Craig, I totally agree with you. I think the visual, because of the size of these, the visual aspects, they do look far too close. But it's not just that as a standalone. I would agree with Councillor Lennox and that, you know, perhaps the way I would put it, they are out of character with that area. It's completely out of character. It does look like it's just something that's been dropped from the moon, sort of thing. It's out of character with the area.
Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Chair. Now, these are taller than normal. Correct, David?
We have some that are larger, but they're at the upper end of what's been consented in East Ayrshire.
Right. At the site visit yesterday, especially at Newcomnock, looking over to where they're going, and the same as Glenmuir Valley is Cairntable. It's just going to waste the views, not just the views, the way the countryside's laid out. Thank you.
That's Councillor Kyle. Just for clarification, obviously, earlier on you were minded to refuse as per the recommendations on page 60. Is that still your?
Yes.
Right. Just for clarification, so the recommendations on page 60, as per the officer's recommendations, you're not including visual impact, or?
As the people of Muirkirk said, Mr. Lennox said, or Councillor Lennox said, everything's been dropped out an aeroplane. There's nothing round about it. All they're going to see is these windmills or wind farms. And I still go by, I think it should be refused.
Yep. So you want to add in the visual impact as well? Right, okay. So I've got that clarification.
Through you, Chair, I was going to come in because it seems to me, I think a number of councillors have been moving a number of things, and it was just to get to a point where we've got perhaps either one motion or a motion and an amendment, so that we can maybe put that before the committee for either probably a vote and a determination, so that the decision can then be taken. But as I now understand it, Councillor Kyle, you have, in accordance with comments heard from other colleagues, your motion is essentially the same, it seems to me, as the amendment, which is the reasons for refusal together with the landscape and visual impact comments, I think, that were made by Councillors Lennox, McGee and Watts in relation to that, not only as a standalone, but as I understand it also, am I right in saying there was an element there of the visual impact, you know, as we've said, from various locations, just so that we are clear on the wording. If that's the case, we appear to just have one motion there, which is to refuse. And it doesn't appear there are any other motions coming forward.
I'd move like refusal as per the officer's recommendations in page 60. Yep. Councillor Maitland.
Don't know if you want a seconder, but I would second that.
Okay, so we've got so Craig, to keep me right here, Would this then be the motion here? And
So the motion is to refuse it on the grounds of the report, and the amendment is to refuse it plus the visual impact. So Councillor Barton and Councillor Maitland.
just clarify that again.
So the motion is to refuse it as detailed in the report. The amendment is to refuse it with the addition of the visual impact. Councillor Barton, seconded by Councillor Maitland, were for the motion, and Councillor Kyle, seconded by, I don't know who could use it, Councillor Lennox, for the amendment. So if I call out your names, can you let me know if you're for the motion, which is to refuse per the report, or the amendment with the added visual impact? So Councillor Barton is for the motion. Councillor McGee,
Amendment.
Councillor Friel,
Amendment.
Councillor Cowan,
Amendment.
Councillor Sangster,
Amendment.
Councillor Mabin,
For the motion, please.
Councillor Maitland,
Motion.
Councillor Lennox is for the
Amendment.
amendment. Councillor Crawford's not here. Councillor Watts,
Amendment.
Councillor Filson,
Amendment.
and Councillor Hawke's not here. So the amendment is carried with 6 votes to 4.
Does she include councillor Kylan? For the-
Oh, Councillor Kyle's for the amendment.
Amendment.
So 7 votes to 4, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, Elaine, can you just record that decision?
For the purpose of the minute, the application has been refused with the addition of visual impact as a condition of refusal.
Thanks very much, members. That concludes today's business. Thanks very much for your attendance.